I will pass this whole email around to the executive committee. I think it's worth bringing up and discussing them in the board meeting. Again, it doesn't require a vote for approval, but
Why does it not require a vote?
because the district will approve it for us. It will, I don't know. They just said to-
I would think internally we want to have that approval as well. Or at least, yeah. Because I think there will be an administrative aspect to it, and I think there's also a relationship aspect. If we set these guys up, I think we're going to want to devote the effort to stay close to them, with the idea to ultimately try to pull them into full-time members market.
Yeah, it says that we should work on a process for adding a satellite club, and you should add that process into our bylaws. That would mean that we bring on board of health, so he said the other mention. I'll shoot this around.
And again, this is my first eyeball on the idea, just from hearing it. Steve is super excited about it. Steve and Wolf, we have both. I know Bryce Finley is as the incoming. So I think it's a little more creative than the traditional brick and mortar, and we've always done it this way. And I like, I like the idea. Let's just try it. Let's see if we can get it up and running. And if we do, good for us. If we don't, we try it.
Well,
And we're trying something new.
yeah, it may not be worked out, the details and exploration and looking at issues, I think needs to be kind of assigned to the membership committee, because that's really where it belongs.
We could do that.
And kind of not make a determination, but at least explore all the issues. And
We
some
can do that, Alan, and
discussion.
I can work on that together.
And some, then bringing that discussion to here and then to the board. A lot of kind of questions, what are the advantages and disadvantages? That's what I would suggest.
The other deal that he would like, Steve Kaiser, he would like to come in and speak to our club about getting our family members that are in town, getting email addresses so that he can drip on them and maybe entice them to follow in their parents' footsteps to become Rotarians. My kids get super involved because I tell them they have to do service hours and projects with us, but they're not old enough to be Rotarians. They're going to go off to college in different areas, so.
They're not old enough to say that.
Well, one of them is, but he dare not.
Plus one. It's an implied structure.
I still have some hostage holding. But, so what do you guys think about that idea?
I think what we do is go through,
Right,
just submit the names,
that's what he's talking about.
and that's up to the members who they decide who, because my daughter in Pittsburgh's not.
Well, it would have to be people in town. It wouldn't make sense if they were out of town to become members of our club.
I'd rather
there's
approach it.
Probably people, I mean, like my daughter's here, but she can't leave work for an hour and a half during the middle of the day.
So
So
would this satellite idea be something for
with
her?
the satellite, maybe, I mean, now she's got a baby, she's trying to work out the working and the baby and the child, it's a whole new.
It's all hard, yeah.
It's so hard, but, I know she has the interest, she just doesn't have the time. A satellite might be doable.
One of the ideas that came up in this discussion with the Santiago Club and Satellite Clubs was the fact that they were talking about retirement centers. It's difficult sometimes for retirement centers to attend these things. But I think that there may be a potential there. And one of the things that came up in the discussion was, well, maybe these people can't be active in terms of carrying out projects, but they can run projects. So that might be their contribution.
Sure.
think about projects that they would like to support and work with them on. So just a thought here before we leave that.
And that might be, if a satellite club is in the grant, or residents with the grant.
Right.
Now, I guess it's implied in all this, that whatever this group is, whether it's young people or older people, they can't attend the normal meetings they want. Because if they could, why wouldn't they just be a member of this?
Right.
So I guess what you're doing is you're setting up a separate satellite breakfast club for young people maybe, and
Maybe they want a happy hour, I don't know.
yeah.
So the recommendation is to have Alan do a little more research on this idea before we come back to the executive committee and then figure out that we want to pass it on to the board.
That sounds good.
Okay. Perfect. And I think that is anything else that we need to add onto the agenda for the board.
So the only thing, and this is to ask Steve, you know, Mark Davis, who hasn't been here, was sent a letter. And I don't know if Steve has heard from him or if we need to put his resignation on the next agenda or where we stand. But probably Steve needs to follow up for our next board meeting.
We need to move the table out.
So, and will our next board meeting, only because next week I have to plan some other client stops and visits. Will it be on Zoom or will it be in person? Who knows, right? Never quite sure.
Let's just do it
Have
Zoom
schedule
because everybody's got
things.
such hectic schedules.
Schedules and just, yeah.
And now, yeah, I think we talked about this a couple months ago, figuring out the location.
Is difficult, so, yeah, okay.
Does Tom Rice, the minister, does he come? What church is he involved in?
Worthington, yeah.
Is it right there on the corner behind the Andersons?
Right.
No,
Somebody's,
no, he's on the corner of High Street.
High Street,
And
161, just right on the Village Green.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody had suggested we meet there.
Somebody suggested a church and I thought, well, why not ask him? He's
Well, we did at the beginning of
a
the
higher power of
pandemic,
a church.
and the problem was is that they were, the two problems are is that they don't know when they're going to have a wedding or a funeral at the same time. If they do, they have to fix out for that because they have to use the period or not. The other reason was that they, at the beginning, Columbus schools closed completely and they ran an alternate school program. That's gone back. First answer still applies.
It might be a problem in all the same church.
I would think so too, if a funeral comes out,
Right,
You have to have extra.
you gotta drop and
Yeah.
get ready for that.
And so I gave up making all the calls for the group. I also checked with that for this.
Well, was it Jim that you
And that
felt,
was,
yeah, I'm sorry, was it that you felt that, you know, it wasn't worth pursuing because if something like that came up, we could just hold a Zoom meeting. I mean, it's not like-
well, we had it reserved and needed to change at the last minute, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what, I mean, the board used to be at City Hall. What happened? I forget why we left
the
there.
board, I think we could, you'd find. a
Oh,
room.
you're talking about the whole club, the
Yeah,
whole meeting.
And we could possibly find a church you've got a room similar size, if they have both sides. But the whole meeting
The
hall, large meeting hall, every church is gonna have that problem. The thing with, I know my club, like Worcester, is just so large and it's such a low income because that you have 160 members. They sure their hall, and they pay a price for that.
Yeah.
And so they can tell a wedding for people,
Not this time.
not
where-
this time, and it's financially well.
Yeah.
Hey, do we need to look?
Thank you.
Sure. Over that corner.
Good, how are you?
That's pretty interesting.
You don't worry about it.
Yeah, what is it?
No, my husband. Yes, we don't clean our sweat. No. I know. He said we all have, they thought you had a nurse. Yeah, tell me about it, sorry, but it just doesn't make any sense. Oh, no. So,
Yeah.
I am on you're gonna be here.
So as I told him, I said,
6 months ago, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a nurse, so I'm leaving at 5 o'clock.
all right, where do you want me to place this? Do you want it over here, like where Steve normally has it? Fine with me. So flip and tie.
My God, Alex.
Too many bugs. Hopefully no one trips over 'em.
Hi.
Anyhow, this thing got.
I think he's a guest.
Who's that?
You.
Yeah, there he is. Okay, now I recognize him.
Blackout.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to be seen, right?
How you doing? Oh, well. When you going east, Nick, get yourself.
I was there for Thanksgiving.
Anything else?
No, not there.
Well, you need to go back there. When it's nice and cozy.
They had a lot of snow on the ground on the way home.
They were.
I'll go back, winter. Probably February or March. Sure, go back for about a month, I'll go back. She likes it. It's winter there. So, how's everybody here feeling?
What's your son doing?
Yeah, it's young.
He is,
You have what, 5 kids now?
he's learning to be a father and a daughter. And, he's learning.
Yeah.
Better learn.
Or start talking back to her.
I'm out here. Coming next week.
Well, working on it. But that's good. Everything's fine. Thank you for that. Good. That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Just talking to people who came back from Vegas and stayed in a new hotel where the Stardust used to be and,
What's the name of it?
that's big.
Yeah, they changed the ball around.
Don and Judy Gray and her
I mean, I stayed.
first cousin went out in 58. Started her church. Along with relatives, left in Park, what they did, they sold about 5 years ago for a dollar. Now enjoy, whatever they enjoy when you do it. They're having, they had his 80th birthday. It was 2020, so they couldn't celebrate, but they had that. You know, they'll be named after him, and then next year, they had Edie. Edie's first birthday. That's birthday. Oh, was it? Red?
All, it's that very
Red
fast.
Mountain. It is. Red Hill on it. Well, 40 and others out. That ain't, and they said that they
There we go.
they don't go to.
They shut it down at all? Or
Three.
still-
No, I'm not.
Very much not.
Yeah.
At least for good. At least for now.
What's that? I haven't seen you long.
So when you like the district
Sitting up taking notes.
position,
Okay,
that's how I was thinking between Bernie and I.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You didn't do anything.
Jay Lou's or anywhere.
Not about the furthest thing. That's what I was thinking, and then it's like, gosh, I'm just not really sure.
Amazing.
Some of that.
Right in there?
some of that history is
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the yard sign, and that was nice that your daughter connected you to me.
So what is your understanding of the life?
It was a terrible campaign. Although
Population.
people called the one where leaking money, dark money, I don't consider that. I knew exactly where the money came from.
We're gonna bring in the virus.
I don't know that that was secretive, but it was something that Worthington has never seen or dealt with.
That they.
Yes, ma'am. Hi. I know. Are you? I haven't seen it in my discussions with I am.
Yeah, there's one down the bottom of the hill by
pretty sure
the
it's
bucket.
always there. Now, the billboard was not from Worthington, that was different. I don't know that very well.
Almost treat you like a.
I can go carry something.
The crazy thing is, it made people feel sorry for it. I feel like it did the opposite. Exactly the opposite. It totally backfired.
Yeah.
Okay. You too.
We go travel.
She's your
We could
tech,
get sued.
your social media.
Oh.
Couldn't wait to get out of there.
No, I got it. Yep.
Facilities are nice and everything.
You're able to get the PowerPoint loaded?
Yes.
That'll show up here, okay?
Yeah, well, the question I have is it PowerPoint or is it
No,
PDF?
For this foundation.
It's PDF, it's Google Slides, if that helps.
Okay, well, it's here.
Okay, good.
So do you know how to use Zoom?
Let's talk about.
I've been on Zooms, I haven't run.
Okay.
So the trick will be advancing this, I don't know if you have a clicker or something that can advance the slides.
Really? Not really. This is it from the computer. If you want, I can sit here and advance it, and run the Zoom. No,
I will.
this.
Well, I can, what I'll do, I've got a small computer, Surface Pro, that has my comments narrative on it.
Okay.
I could use that, so I probably, I've got a hard copy too.
I can move this to a different spot, and that way you can have it like this.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That works.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna run the show back here, if you don't mind. I don't know where I'm gonna put this.
How's the cake? You good? It's for a good cause, right? I'm thinking blood trip, oh, let's come to our. Which one did this up?
You're thinking of Michigan game. Well, you know, the one Michigan player,
Nothing like having this off.
and their line,
Well, it's very
not
hard.
the finesse, they're finesse deep, they're not a,
I think Congress, I think.
smash. That's it, like, that thing goes. Well,
It's not a duty.
Hopefully, this thing is working. Yeah, testing. Testing. Said it had low batteries. I don't know how to do this.
Well, this isn't that big a room.
It's for Zoom.
Oh, for Zoom. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, virtual members too.
Yes.
I mean, not to hurt me.
she had one about,
Unlike you, she gets so hard, it's so not her, who she is. That's all. I'm also that side.
well, not with the Jaguar.
And I had never been to my like Gary Moore or a.
Figure out how to do
The
this.
other guy.
That's the one I fix that for Zoom.
Well, not really. This thing works.
Okay.
This thing is supposed to pick it up, but I am not savvy on it.
Well, I realize you're filling in. I appreciate that.
Actually, not really.
Oh, you've done this before?
I've done this before. Slightly. Steve normally runs the show. It's
Teresa.
thank you.
Now.
This is me. I need a Zoom
Okay.
Teresa's the president of the town, so I'm just the tech.
All right, well, not just the technique, that's an important role.
Quote unquote tech. Yeah, thank
They
you.
kicked us out of the nursing home.
So excited. How are you?
I'm there for the.
You believe your book still come out on top?
I never thought we were out. Well, I never thought we were out. We're down at, but we didn't play bad.
I think
That was a kill.
one day, not.
They were.
What about Florida getting knocked off by team down one game?
I do all this stuff, but I forget.
Southern or something like that. And, I mean, when they close. Almost 20 points.
How are you?
See, that's on what, the last second shot.
Texas Southern with just
Yeah. Good advice.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. Good here.
Did you?
I should see this place from my house. I live right up on the about 3 minutes. I bet.
Oh, you're being sarcastic. I'm like, that's the truth.
I didn't know. Where do you live? Look at your.
My favorite number. Oh. 977.
Look at your.
Yeah.
Where you located?
Right here.
That's kind of.
Takes a village here.
One of the things I'll ask.
Whatever they're doing.
I was there 8 years.
We can change
I plan on joining one. You know, there's one. Next week. I really enjoyed the years I had. I was superintendent.
Oh, okay.
North Carolina for several years. It's a trip. Really enjoyed it.
Good. Who is introducing you? Katie, do we know?
Steve,
I don't know off the top of my head. Joe? Is Joe coming? I have no idea.
Joe's what I've been talking to. Yeah, he did say he's looking for that.
Okay.
And he has.
To say, who has your bio?
Joe does.
Okay, there's Joe now.
All right, good.
We'll get you connected. We have, let's see how many we have coming in on Zoom right now. None, just us. Okay. Oh, well, we're early. We're about 15, a few minutes early. They come in late, right on time.
You eat and then you do your business and your social stuff. Come on.
We do it all, we don't take time out to eat. We just start our program right out of the gate. So we'll do some announcements. We'll do a couple of the Rotary fun things that we do, sergeants and all of that. You're on camera now?
I think you're planning on me for like 20 minutes plus question and answer.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
Okay.
Down to about 20 minutes, so get through that as quickly as possible.
Very good.
I do want to leave time for questions. That's probably the best part of the whole thing.
I'm sure we'll get some good ones.
I wouldn't doubt it. Good.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
here.
my pleasure.
How are you, Phil?
Yeah, well, there's still. Yeah, there's no perfect communication plan.
Most of the week it was Monday is
All about the.
and on the way down.
Katie, question, I don't know if you could cover this. I'd love to get rid of this top part. I don't want to screw it up. Is it possible to eliminate that or just get this? You know how to do that?
Up on where?
Well, just so the whole screen is this. I don't need all this stuff.
Don't know
If you don't worry about it.
Yeah, no.
Maximize, I think that's the maximum I can get it, so, all right, not a problem.
I don't see anything over here that indicates
Yeah, right.
get rid of it.
Well, we'll just deal with it. Just deal with it.
I just want to let you know quickly, I have to leave at 12:30, so I'm not being rude when you see me get up.
Actually, I'll leave. Okay, I'll just do this. I will leave some stuff. If you have any questions, you want to get a hold of me, I'm more than happy to talk to you or email, whatever. But I appreciate that.
I think they want to speak, so they want
My background's in business tech, but that's like beyond.
I remember way back, I was actually about 7th or 8th grade, which was back in the 50s. Somebody said, teachers were saying, well, one of these days the platforms, Apple and whatever, will all be the same, all be interchangeable. Well, they're better, but they're sure not there yet.
No, no one's gone to one platform yet. So.
Right. Surprising. How you doing, Joe? Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to be here. You're introducing me. Good. 20 minutes or so. Definitely big time for questions. Sure. Cincinnati area. They was a running thing. That before tech was it's fun. So look it up. You can buy time. They went on 20 minutes. Got on. 10 minutes left. 30 minute sessions. Yes. Yeah. We ended up with 10 minutes. The guy in charge don't have it. You have this. You can just bail it out. Everybody bail it out. Yes. I don't know how they looked at it. No budget better than that.
The open house.
Thank you again for all your emails.
Well,
I
hopefully
can
we're-
never thank you enough.
Say, well, thank you, Courtney, I appreciate it. Be careful.
Boy, she played. I got her all.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I'm sitting at the other end and I'm playing, like I did last week, I'm playing, what do you want to call that? Slide advancer. Slide, like the presentation advancer. Can hear me.
I didn't hear all of that.
I'm playing presentation advancer again. Hopefully
I'm surprised no one else is online.
you can't see me, I'm shrugging my shoulders. No idea.
Seat here.
No, that's my fault. I know that makes sense. They can like one pass.
Hey, John Butterfield.
Get out of here. There we go. Hi, Rachel. Ooh, that's colorful.
Hey. Yeah. I had a meeting last night, a public meeting last night, then I left my background up because it's fun.
It's great. Did you design that?
No, this is the Rec and Park logo.
It's the what?
It's the City of Columbus Recreation and Parks logo.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's cool.
It usually has a white background. I could change it.
Well, that's a river. I mean, the blue is the river going through Dublin Parks River.
Buildings and trees. Yep.
Buildings and trees. Yeah, it's great. How long has that been there? How long has that been their logo?
Oh, we're Rec and Parks for a while. It's definitely not like the whole city's logo.
Yeah. Parks and How are your projects coming along?
We had 35 people attend last night. We have two pools. We should bid them out in the spring, and they hopefully will start in construction in the fall of 2022 and be done in 2023. And we have a new senior place that hopefully will be in line in 2024. But I'm in the middle of design right now for that, so things are going good.
Good.
Yeah, again, I just want to calibrate expectations.
I had my hip replaced on Tuesday.
Okay. How did that go?
Went great. Went great. I didn't have to have any narcotics, which was tremendous. Yeah.
On right now.
But it's a little, one of the
How do you turn it on?
small things is I can't sit very long. Here I had plans to read and use the computer.
Battery's fine.
So that's the only thing I'm having a problem with right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do I turn this on? It's on.
Well, how much? So you can walk around and everything. I mean, you can that immediately. You can get up and.
Yeah, we do it outpatient now. So I went in at my surgery was at 7. We had to be there at the surgery center in Grove City. You know where that is? It's Springtown Road. Left, keep going. It's adjacent to the Ohio Health building. It was a surgical center for Ohio Health, and then they didn't have enough business, so then a bunch of doctors in orthopedic one bought it. So you go into the Ohio Health Hospital building, go into it. We were there at 4:45, and we were back here home at 2:30.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, I'm glad it went well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we might need to be muted. So Teresa looks like she's trying to get us to. Yeah.
Hello. No.
Finally.
Got it.
Stop yelling at us.
I know, I'm sorry. Is this better?
It's not your fault. I stood right next to it.
It is 12 o'clock and we run an on-time airline here, so. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. So for guests and visitors, my name is Teresa Russell and would like to welcome you to the 22nd meeting of the 47th year of the Dublin Worthington Rotary Club. I am president-elect and I'll be your travel guide today. So if you like the program, give me a 5-star rating on your site of choice. If you don't like the program, Steve will be back next week. I want to remind everybody there is a mask mandate in Worthington. So if you're not eating or drinking actively, we ask that you keep a mask on, and I hate it, but here we go. Please follow the rules. You're just encouraged. So today's invocation and pledge of allegiance will be offered by the one and only Tim Moats.
He's online.
Would you bow your heads in prayer with me, please? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for the many blessings that you shower upon us, many of which we take for granted, for food, clothing, shelter, good minds, and strong bodies. We just thank you for this holiday season and the opportunity to spend time with family and friends. We just thank you for Rotary and the opportunity we have to serve others. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I know we have a couple of visitors. Peggy, you have a visitor?
Lou's back.
Yay! Now we have a prior member, Joe Buddy, in the audience today. Welcome. Are there any on Zoom, Katie?
No, the rest of them are.
And we have our speaker that will be announced and introduced later. But first of all, we have Sergeant Bill.
All right, thank you.
Oh, wait, before, Darnell?
Oh, announcement?
Before we go, no, we gotta do a sergeant. Hold on. You know that I sold the most poinsettias at 70, right? And did you go in yesterday and add one more to beat me?
What?
Find him, Phil.
Add 2 more to your total. That was the challenge.
It's up to you.
That's worth a lot right there. Excuse me, and I will undo for a second here. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to already have from a past president and a president-elect, a duel that's going to cost each some money. So that's fair. But I also would like to get somebody who is willing and able to carry the pot. And I can't think of anybody more appropriate than someone who's not a member. That someone was a member. That someone turns out to be somehow a relative of mine. Unfortunately, it wasn't through my paternal or maternal side. Hence, I am 5'6½", and he is 6'5½". Get up here, buddy. You're carrying a pot, and you're going to put some money in it. Just because you're back.
I already bought poinsettias.
I know, well, you put money in the pot. And but the first thing we get to do is that someone was kind enough to buy lottery tickets. And isn't that wonderful way to support, indeed, what we're trying to get done? However, we didn't think very much of it because you left them
Oh, no.
there. So for anyone who thought they bought lottery tickets, raffle tickets, what is it? A raffle? Yeah, lottery is another thing. Raffle tickets. You might want to check your mind. And if your mind is not even thinking about that, then this will go into the pot. And if it wins, all the proceeds will stay in the pot. Now, it's only gonna cost you a couple bucks to get these back. Should they not? Reclaim?
Alan Grossman left.
No, Alan Grossman is standing wonderfully in the back with the fire hose close to him, ready to put it out. But, well, in that case, I don't think there's anything much more we can do about that except put it back in the pot. And let's.
Well, the other three are already in
There's, yes, so that will be somebody.
You have your tickets?
Oh, yeah, next.
You have your tickets, right? Yes.
Okay, happy dollars. Happy dollars. Anything else? No happy dollars. It's gotta be happy dollars.
We got some on Zoom.
Hey, Phil, I have a happy dollar.
Hello, John. Tell us what's going on in your house.
I'm happy that my hip replacement got put in, and I'm back home, and I have a great caregiver. I'm happy for that. And the only problem I have is sitting down for very long periods of time. So I may not be staying very long.
That's not news, guys.
I don't know if you heard that. They said it's not new.
That was wonderful. And is your new bicycle on order?
Yeah, it's one with 4 wheels.
Okay, yes.
I'm happy for the Bearcats.
Yeah.
You have to be happy for the Bearcats. I agree with that. Anybody else? Anything else? In view of that, there was a meeting of the Sergeants Committee earlier today, and in respect for announcements and for the wonderful program, the Sergeants Committee is going to contribute the balance of the necessary requirements for the sergeant pot. So to that, the sergeant's time is over.
Right.
What are the necessary requirements?
John wants to know what the necessary requirements are.
Tell him to ride his bicycle.
He said to go ride your bicycle. Any announcements? I know we have several. Come on up, stand up, shout. If you want the mic, here it is. Katie.
Well, I hope you guys all know that we are having a holiday party on December 29th. In the email that you got this week, you should have seen an RSVP, or you can just directly let me know if you're coming or not. What's nice is I don't have to take a food count. They will let you order from your table, from your seat that night, whatever. Yes. Oh my God. So that's really nice. All you need to do is let me know if you're showing up and if you're bringing a guest. So and how you want to be billed, whether you want to send Jennifer a check or whether you just want her to bill you on your next statement. And that's it. Thanks. Dick, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, happy dollars. Here's a couple because poinsettia sales was again a success. Best count we have is about 576 plants were sold. Thanks to all of you. Number 2, charitable wise, 74 plants are being donated to various nursing homes around the area. Thanks to 18 of you who are generous people who did that. And lastly, weather held out nicely up until this morning. So I assume most of us have delivered our plants and have started to collect funds for those. So that's a great idea. If you turn your money in next week, that'd be great. If not, I think you'll be billed by our famous treasurer. So again, thanks again for the great effort.
Thank you.
Yes, last week we announced that we are launching our push for our Super Bowl on Saturday, February 5th of 2022. This year we're pushing lane sponsorships as a way to raise a lot more money for this event. And I'm proud to tell you that between last week and this week, we've sold 5 lane sponsorships already. That gives us only 25 to go. So please get out there and sell those lane sponsorships. Also, we're trying to cover the clubs in as many in the district as we can. Not all of them, that's kind of unrealistic, but we'd like to get the Northern Belt plus any other clubs that any of you attend on a normal basis, within or without the district. So if you do that, if you're willing to volunteer for that, see me afterwards. I have packets I can give you to present at those club meetings when you attend them.
How much
Yes,
is the lane sponsorship?
$100. I should have said that. Yes, it's the easiest sell you'll ever make. They'll get credit on a table right next to the lane and in the literature that we're going to pass out that day. And then while you're talking to them, you can upsell them and get them to send a team as well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Yeah, I have a card here. Oh, okay. Do the screaming. I have a card here that I'd like for everybody to sign and put your blessings in for Connie Hendren. Connie has a big surgery coming up soon. It's the Whipple surgery for her pancreatic cancer. So keep her in your prayers, please, and sign the card and give her your blessing.
Thank you.
She wants the microphone, not the card.
Anybody else have announcements?
I do.
Oh, really?
Right. Right. Remind me real quick, like this weekend, we deliver gifts to the needy families. And we meet over at Kilbourne High School. We're in Kilbourne. And
That's by the stadium, is that door?
no, it's right up a heart. You know, like it's right off the drop off.
Where we show up.
Right up in the front.
Okay.
In the front, because we're doing it in the front like we did last year. Okay, hope we can catch. And so I have sign-up sheets. I'm gonna start them on this end for each row, and I'll pick it up at the end if you can help out. Katie has signed up to be a delivery team, but she's only a team of one. She needs one other person. So please sign up. Thanks.
Who wants to ride with me?
Yes, just to make sure everybody knows, if you came to pick up your poinsettias, notice we could not have fit them in this room. They are in Steve's office, and we will be assisting you finding them right after the meeting.
Thank you all. Anybody else have any more announcements? Anybody on Zoom?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. So,
Mike, do you have announcements? You just unmute yourself by accident. He unmutes himself by accident. We're good.
I guess, Joe, we're ready for the program.
Very well. Today, we are fortunate to have Ted Knapke here.
You have to do, so the Zoom people can.
Oh, very well. Zoom people, sorry. I did not mean to leave you out. Today, we're fortunate to have Ted Knapke, who some of you may know as he lives here in our community and has been active in Rotary and a number of clubs. And Ted comes to us to talk to us about a group called American Promise Ohio. And I think you'll find the topic timely. I think we can all agree that our political system is not working quite exactly as well as it could. And whether the ideas that Ted and his group are going to present to us make some sense for you, it's certainly a fruitful conversation for us to consider. Take it away, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Your turn. Is it up to you or what? Oh, I don't want. Here we go.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to be with you today. As a longtime Rotarian, as Joe mentioned, and a school superintendent in 2 different states, I have consistently found that Rotary members tend to be professionals who are deeply committed to service above self. With that in mind, I'm here to talk to you today about a threat to the civic and economic foundations of our country. I need to say right off the bat, this presentation has been used quite often across the country. American Promise Ohio is a chapter, as Joe alluded. American Promise is a national group, and it's been in existence for about 6 years now, I think. But I've taken about a 45-minute presentation and compressed it down to about 20 minutes. And I definitely want to leave time for questions. My experience a couple of times I've done this with Rotary is that's the best part of the program, Q&A. So That in mind, I want to mention first off a significant trend toward pay-to-play politics on both sides of the aisle. This is definitely something that Democrats and Republicans have been involved in. That's why American Promise is an apolitical group. Unfortunately, that's the effect of that is to weaken our ability to speak constructively to people with different views, to solve societal issues, and greatly reduce our country's ability to sustain an economy where companies compete based on the value they create in the marketplace. Today, our focus is not on politics, but on the civic foundations that enable peace, prosperity, and human well-being. Our discussion is not merely Republican or Democrat, it's an American issue put forth by American Promise, again, a strictly nonpartisan group, members across the country. Our goals today.
Sorry.
That's all right. Just making sure I'm on the same page that
Am I on
Katie
the
is
same
here.
page?
You're one ahead of me, but that's fine. You can leave it
Okay.
there. Again, our goals today are to increase awareness using both civic and economic reasoning to introduce businesses' unique role in the American Promise solution. We will accomplish this by outlining the problem, applying the four-way test, and providing steps you can take if you choose to participate in the problem. To that end, I put several pieces of paper out. There's a business statement of principle for those of you who want to look at that, take it with you if you like. There is also a statement of principle for community leaders and business people. Obviously, those overlap. So take a look at those if you would. There should be enough for every table, maybe more than one per table. If we run out, let me know. Appreciate you taking a look at those as we go through the program. Again, I'm here as a volunteer with American Promise because as an Ohioan, I've witnessed the influence of money in our state government many times over the last 2 decades. The payday lending scandal dominated the Ohio legislators in 2018. ECOT and the company that preceded it cost taxpayers millions of dollars. And most recently, because of the $61 million First Energy bribery scandal, Ohioans have literally paid heavily as a result of pay to play. In 1971, Common Cause, a nonpartisan watchdog group based in Washington, D.C., was founded by John Gardner. He said at that time, if we don't get large campaign contributions out of our election system, our democratic form of government will be in grave danger. He had no way of knowing how insightful he was back then, 50 years ago, actually 50 years ago to this year. Today, American Promise is one of a number of groups leading cross-partisan advance to charge the Win Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I'll talk a little bit later about why that is the necessary solution. Using a grassroots approach, American Promise's mission for 2026 is to help empower, inspire, and organize all Americans to put an end to pay to play. Our hope is the conversation today will inspire you to get involved if you choose to, either by signing our statement of principle and thus joining nearly 80% of Americans who agree this is needed, or by signing up to learn more. And I put my email address, I noticed on that one form, I should have put it up under contact, it's down at the bottom, written there, my email address. Be more than happy to communicate with any of you that have questions if you don't get resolved today. If you happen to know someone who isn't here, maybe someone who's retired, has the time, feel free to let me know about them or to pass the information on. And I'm also here as part of the American Promise Business Network, a national organization. Just as Rotarians view occupation as an avenue for service and leadership, we feel it's critical to invite civic-minded, values-driven professionals across the country to explore the topic, partly because they cut across partisan lines, and because pay-to-play damages the type of economy most of us believe in, where success is determined by the value created in the marketplace. And there's a quote here that maybe you can't read probably, Peter Schwartz, if you go down just a bit, there we go. It says, my life has been about taking the long view, short leash here, I see. Today's rules of the political game make it impossible for a government or businesses to take the long view. We need a 28th Amendment to give the future a voice. He is a futurist and author of The Art of the Long View. As I mentioned previously, Ohio has experienced pay-to-play results in real time with the First Energy $60 million bribery scandal, the largest public corruption case in state history. Another example, that ECOT scandal. If you're familiar with what ECOT is, okay, it's the online school program. And as a school superintendent, I had some firsthand experience with the impact that it had across the state. State was overpaying ECOT based on inflated enrollment, and at the same time, the company and its predecessor, White Hat Management, which had been around for a number of years, were making millions of dollars. We had students sitting at home, maybe working diligently, and maybe not. We had no way of knowing. We did know that every student that left a public school and went to ECOT or White Hat Management took with them the state money. So superintendents were telling us, it didn't happen in the districts I was superintendent, unfortunately, but they were losing maybe a dozen, 15, 20, or maybe 100 in a large district, and every one of those students took with them the state dollars. So it did hurt the local school district. I'm passionate about this project because as a fiscally conservative independent, I feel that wasting hundreds of millions of dollars is not in our residents' best interest. Moreover, I'm very concerned about the condition our country will be in for our grandchildren. I have 8 of them here in Columbus. They're all in families that are pretty well off reasonably, but I'm really concerned between environment and a number of other things, what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years if the trend continues. If you would advance. I don't know how much your club has studied Rotary's idea of positive peace. I know as a Rotarian, I hadn't seen it very much at all. It's based on these 8 pillars. Have you heard of this at all? Or you spend any time on it? This will be new information possibly. That's fine. And those 8, can't read it from back, I'm sure. Saving mothers and children, supporting education, growing local economies, fighting disease, supporting the environment, provide clean water, sanitation, hygiene, and promoting peace. Pretty hard to argue with any of those. Rotary developed them for that reason. And in 2018, a Rotary International partner, the Institute for Economics and Peace, came up with the idea of positive peace, defining it not just as the absence of violence, but the optimum environment for human potential to flourish. The research shows that those 8 pillars that contribute to positive peace. And those are, since most of you can't read those, well-functioning government, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high levels of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low levels of corruption, and sound business environment. Again, pretty much bedrock principles for our country. The Rotary has put forth. Report found that these 8 factors predict lower future physical violence, greater social well-being, and higher economic growth. So we might think of those 8 pillars as the civic and economic foundation mentioned earlier. Okay, next, please.
Sure.
The good news is that positive peace has been improving all around the world. One surprising exception, North America, dropping by about 4.9%. And I was taken back by this when I first saw it. I wouldn't begin to think the United States is doing worse than these other countries. What we need to realize, this is a relative comparison. Russia, Eurasia has improved over that 10-year period, as some the rest of them have. North America, which was probably better off than any of the rest of them, most of them anyhow, has declined. So it's a relative comparison. It isn't saying that these are better than North America. As an aside, I would be very curious, given some of the tricks that Vladimir Putin's been up to the last several years, if since 1918, this might have dropped considerably. Would like to think so. I apologize. We're updating some of these slides, but we're not quite there yet. The US decline was driven by several of the 8 pillars of peace, in particular, equitable distribution of resources, where US wage disparity is one of the world's highest at 350 to 1. And I've had friends, very bright friends, say, no, there's no way, that's not true. I've also seen a tremendous amount of information that says, yes, somewhere between 300, 400 to 1, between top CEO pay, that's the extreme, and baseline workers, factory workers, McDonald's. So you got quite a spread there, but 350 to 1 is one of the highest, if not the highest in the world. The other factors, free flow of quality information. That's been eroded quite a bit through misinformation that spreads in social media. Acceptance of others' rights. There's an increasing lack of civility in many areas. Levels of corruption. Polls indicate this to be a top issue for most voters. Congress's approval rating, 20 to 25%. If you would go to the next one, please. All right, let's go one more if you would. And again, the reality is rules that foster pay-to-play politics are threatening the economics.
Having a little trouble hearing you. Can you
Are
just
you-
mic up?
All right, may not behind it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go one more if you would. All right. Let's think for a minute about the idea of sound business environment, where success is based on the value created. I think most of us would agree that a vast majority of business leaders believe in certain common principles. Specifically, most believe in an economy where businesses compete based on the value they create in the marketplace. In part, this is why entrepreneurs and small businesses are so admired by our communities. They have the courage to step up to that challenge. In fact, 98% of employers in the US are small businesses, creating 55% of the jobs. Today's reality, unfortunately, today's reality has drifted from those principles. Dysfunctional incentives, particularly campaign contributions, have contributed to a marketplace increasingly driven by political favors, tilting free market capitalism toward crony capitalism. Instead of rules that reward creating value, we have rules that foster pay to play as a strategy for making money, where companies, wealthy individuals, and special interests use unlimited spending to obtain tax breaks, loan guarantees, subsidies, regulatory favors, lax enforcement of laws, and other political favors. While this may sound like a strong criticism, it's simply the game that we are being forced to play. Again, it's not one party or the other. That's the game that's evolved over the last 40, 50 years. I've got involved this 4 or 5 years. I was a math teacher and I was an English major. I was schizophrenic, but really wasn't a history scholar at all. I wasn't that enamored with it. About 5 or 6 years ago, when I got involved in retirement in American Promise, I started reading. There's a book called Dark Money. I would highly recommend if you have the time. Mayer is the name of the author. She's written for the Wall Street Journal. She's written for the Atlantic. It really gives you a very detailed account of what's happened over the last 50 years and how we've gotten to the position we're in. And a lot of it's things that I wasn't aware of. Vast majority of people don't have a clue of how much part money has paid and where we are right now. And I could give you some examples of what I just talked about. There's exceptions of being bought by money, but I'm going to keep moving. I want to get finished here in about 20 minutes so we have time for questions. But in many cases, companies end up feeling they must spend large sums of money to defend their businesses against unfavorable legislative actions. In fact, the survey clear back in 2013 showed that 75% of executives believe that the US campaign system is pay to play. 60% of national business leaders surveyed feel there is pressure on corporate leaders to contribute. Unfortunately, very few small, medium-sized businesses have the money to compete with those very large companies that do have the money. Political spending is skyrocketing. Let's go back if you want.
Sure. This one?
I got a little ahead of you. There we go. Thank you. And you can see here, this bar graph shows between 2008 and 2020 what's happened. We've got presidential, the first part of the bar, congressional. We went to $14.4 billion with a B in 2020. It's kind of almost like a logarithmic curve. What's happening here? It's a tremendous amount of money being spent. And that's a direct result of a 2010 Supreme Court decision called Citizens United. I'll go into that a little bit more in detail later. But much of that spending flows through super PACs, which can spend unlimited amount of money and often funded by dark money groups not required to disclose their donors. A lot of that money comes from overseas, we found. This lack of transparency allows campaign funds to come from out of state, out of country, overshadowing the priorities of local citizens, as well as allowing foreign money to influence our elections. The pressure to raise money causes our legislators to be in perpetual campaign mode. We're finding 30 to 70% of their time raising funds. They're on the phone, calling donors, and they don't even have time to read the bills they're expected to vote on. They have to take their aide's word for whether something is good or not in a lot of cases. Even more concerning, This exorbitant spending comes from a very small share of the American public, excuse me. Let's go to the next one, please. And real quickly, this is small print here. The percentage of US adults donating less than or equal to the FEC's limit for individual contributions just happened to be varied from 2,500 went up to 2,700. 99.94 it's dropped to 99. So less than 0.2% of citizens are contributing that amount of money. On the other hand, the combined contributions of 5 donors per election cycle is going to almost $500 million. It just gives you an idea of where the money is coming from. And that's what led President Jimmy Carter to speak about the problem in the Rotarian in 2018, when he said, nowadays, every vote is not the same. The candidates rely on very wealthy people to help them become a nominee, to be elected president, and then they're obliged to those financial contributors when they get in office. And that was obviously a comment about the presidency. The same thing could be said about Congress. They're in the same bind. They have to play that game. And I mentioned 2016, 1% donated about 40%. Next one, if you want to make this on the next one. Okay. 2016, almost 40% contributed. Let's see if I can read this here. Go back here to my script so I get it right. 1%. Make sure I interpret this correctly to you. Upper 1% contribute at least 60%. And this is 2016. We're updating this slide. I apologize, we don't have that just yet, but we're hearing that it's at least 60% in 2020. So that 80% has gone up, and the upper 1% has gone from 38 close to 60 or 70%. 2 examples of why that happened or how we got here. 1976, McCutcheon versus the Federal Election Commission. Supreme Court ruled by a 5-4 vote that money is speech. And because we have First Amendment rights on speech, that said basically you can spend all the money you want. It also ruled that companies are people. Now, companies obviously are made up of people, but legally a company is not a person. They have constitutional rights, and they can stretch as logic to say a company is a person. Many of us are familiar with the bipartisan McCain-Feingold Campaign Reform Act passed back in 2001. Unfortunately, that bill, bipartisan bill, has been rendered virtually ineffective because of what's happened since then. Let's go to the next one, please. Civic impacts. Play to pay does hurt our society. Lobbying with money has become par for the course. I'm going to save some time here. Let me just go in real quickly. You can see on this line graph back in the 60s, 70s, we were about 80% of a positive feeling about our government. That dropped pretty precipitously up to 80 and went back up, back down a good bit, and back up. This was an era of bipartisanship. Clinton and Republicans passed a lot of laws. And then since then, it has gone back down to where we're at about 20%. That's pretty much what we've been reading. Let's skip through a little bit here. And let's go to the next slide. Yes, very good. Matt Paskey, CEO of Trillium Asset Management, said significant corporate dollars now flow into political campaigns, erode transparency and fairness, and are incongruent with the U.S. maintaining its leadership role in the global economy. Businesses, small businesses, again, and mid-sized businesses can't afford to play the game. They're unable to keep up with the complex regulations the system creates. How can anyone or any business keep up with the tax code 76,000 pages long, even after the 2000 alleged reform that was going to simplify it? Some small businesses have told us they feel Congress is taking advantage of that, even while they provide 55% of the jobs. The system also damages mid-sized businesses and innovation forcing many of those to choose between investment in research and development or marketing, or spending money on campaign contributions. They don't have enough resources to do both. So it hurts their businesses if they have to make political contributions. While each player, each business may feel compelled to engage to survive, pay-to-play threatens U.S. innovation and competitiveness. When we look at the combination of these and civic and economic impacts, we can see that unlimited, undisclosed, concentrated political spending hurts us all. Now, back to Rotary. Does pay-to-play pass the four-way test? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill? Better friendships? Will be beneficial? And the cartoon, if you can't see the bottom line, it says, if you represent special interest, I can seat you immediately. So it shows the deferential treatment of those that have the pull, the money. Now, looking at those four pillars, is it the truth? Well, with dark money, PACs, and lack of disclosure, it's impossible to know what the truth is. It's impossible to know who is influencing our elections and our Congress people, or state legislators for that matter. Is it fair to all concerned? The lack of constraints and enforcement are a major factor in Americans' perception that the system is unfair. Only a few get a seat at the table for real decisions. Will it build goodwill or better partnerships, friendships? That's a major factor in polarization. As the big money tends to pay for attack ads at the last minute, often untrue smears of the campaign of the opponent. These tactics do not create goodwill and civility. In fact, I've read where 70% of the dark money goes to attack ads. Quite often, they happen a day or two before the election when the opponent can't really refute what was said, whether it's accurate or not. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We've seen pay-to-play often causes office holders to vote for the priorities of their benefactors rather than vote for the constituents. The current setup causes problems with civic and economic foundations that would otherwise enable us to solve the serious problems confronting our country. Our hope is that this part of the conversation provides you this takeaway. Though we have many challenges, Americans with different views believe that unchecked, undisclosed, and concentrated political spending is a huge part of the problem we now face. So what can we do about it? The bright side, 75% of Americans. That's probably understated right now, particularly in Ohio with the energy scandal. 75% of Americans, regardless of party. It's a little bit of fluctuation between parties, not quite as many Republicans percentage-wise, or independents, which is interesting, but 85% of Democrats. Ironically, right now, most recent election, Democrats accrued 2 times as much money as Republicans. It's been a shift over the last 10 or 15 years. The Democratic candidates are bringing in more money than Republicans. Interestingly, we're having more luck getting Democratic Congress people and state legislators to buy into this. We have more luck with Democratic politicians than we are Republican, even though the Democrats are going to lose if this inaction goes through. Makes you wonder what else is going on. I have theories about that, but we don't need to get into that right now. Now, can you imagine Americans being united on anything to that degree these days? There's a hopeful reality here, I think, a spark that we can use as a basis for coming together, for rebuilding the foundations of positive peace with civility, even if we do differ on individual issues. Now, why is an amendment to the Constitution necessary? Next slide. There are really 3 reasons. I first should mention, as many of you may know, an amendment requires a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress and ratification by 38 states. 3 reasons. Permanence being the first one. No standalone reform can overturn the Supreme Court. If a bill is passed by Congress, the next Congress can unpass it. They can pass a different bill. So it really needs to be an amendment. Precedence is there. 8 of 27 amendments overturned Supreme Court rulings. Women's right to vote, racial equality, women's suffrage, what's the word for it? We eliminated alcohol drinking back to the 20s. Prohibition, thank you. Now that got over.
That was a bad idea.
I thought I'd get some agreement on that. So thank goodness we've overturned that. But the point is, the Supreme Court isn't always right. Times change and things happen and things need to be. That's why the founding fathers put amendments in the process. There are a couple ways to do that, but the one is what I just described. Renewal. This can be a basis for people coming together. That 80% of agreement, this would be a great issue for that to happen. Next slide, please. The momentum is building. Fortunately, we're not starting from ground zero. American Promise, as I said, is 5 or 6 years old. They have a 10-year strategy to enable citizens to win the amendment, building upon momentum at the local, state, and national levels. Where American Promise is working alongside other groups with similar goals. The groundwork has already been started. Over 830 communities in 2020 have signed on. 22 states, actually. This needs to be updated. There were 47 members in the Senate, 220 in the House, and there you see what we need to get to. So we're moving along. The more states that sign on to this, the more pressure Congress is going to feel. They might be feeling right now they don't want to do this for whatever reasons. We don't need to get into. But if they see that a constitutional amendment, enough states get together on this, in the past, that has prompted them to act. They want to feel like they're doing their job as opposed to a state constitutional convention, for example, doing it for them. So our hope is that community leaders and business owners, people like you, will sign the American Promise Statement of Principle. I have some of those floating around. That will enable momentum at the state level, preparing the required 38 states to be ready to ratify. Again, 22 states have done that already. Virginia became the 22nd one, and they span the country all the way to Alaska. I think Texas might be one. I'm not certain on that one. This is happening across the country. The groundwork requires steady grassroots effort until we get to that tipping point, which American Promise is planning for 2024. There we go. Vision of a better country for all. True representative democracy in a free marketplace that work with and need each other. Create an economy where business people compete on the value they create in America's marketplace, not because they're at in spite of a disadvantage. Level playing field, government run by and for the people. Representative democracy, free marketplace, which produces innovation and long-term economic prosperity. In fact, the organization Just Capital reports that 83% of Americans agree that the health of our economy depends on the strength of our democracy. And our goal is to limit that political spending to preserve and restore our representative democracy and ensure that level playing field. Next slide. And Rotarians, needless to say, are impactful. Rotary has done tremendous work over the years. They focus on service above self, and that cuts through partisan divide. As professionals, you bring critical thinking and practical focus on solutions and a history of civic engagement that draws respect and attention from elected officials. Mary Ann Howard, I'll conclude with here. Is a founder and CEO of IMUS. And her statement here is, it's time for moral leadership within our businesses, our communities, and our government that will return to fair competition, checks and balances, and accountability. Now, I'm going to wrap it up there and open it up for questions and comments. But if I haven't, for this presentation, I haven't convinced you, I'll mention again, there's a book called Dark Money, written by Jane Meyer. She's written a number of books. She's very well respected. Actually, the book had 50-some pages of footnotes. Everything is documented. Some of it sounds like hyperbole. Some of this sounds pretty strong. I realize it did surprise me. But the more I read, the more I found out that there's facts behind what's going on and how we got to where we are. There's another book that I came across, and I know the library here in Worthington has it. Old Worthington does. Actually, I got it. I'm not a techie, but I got it on my phone through an app called Libby, and I can now listen to it and have been for the last couple of weeks. And it puts campaign finance into a historical perspective, does it? As I said, I'm not a history person, but I was fascinated how Kurt Anderson, the writer, went back and put things in political perspective. Talked about movements back in the 60s, reaction to those movements, cultural movements, and how campaign finance has changed over the years as a result of different movements in this country. It's really a fascinating read or listen. So I'll stop there. I really appreciate your time and attention. And first question.
You mentioned that 22 states support this. Does this mean that there's an amendment that has been written and the state legislators in those 22 states have voted for that specific amendment?
Very good question. We get that a lot. Yes. The question is, I mentioned 22 states have said they are ready to ratify this. Answer is, the question was, have those states been presented with an amendment? Is the language there? The answer is no. That's a process. Amendment ultimately be written by Congress. Now, American Promise has worked, focus groups, et cetera, to devise some language, but we know that's just it's just a rough draft. So eventually Congress will have to do that. Those 22 states said we're ready to ratify. Now, if Congress comes up with something that some of the states say, no, I'm not buying into this, then they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So it'd be better to have 40 some states, let's say. And if we lost a couple, then so be it. But something needs to happen. But the language to your question really has not been finalized. Yes, sir.
Well, I wondered in all of the numbers that you showed there and so forth about the amount of money, does that include money from labor unions?
It does. Yeah, labor union, good point. I think I mentioned the word unions a couple times. Unions would also, if things go the way we would project, would be prohibited. This would prohibit large corporations. It might put a limit on what they can, but right now they can give unlimited amount. And the book that I was talking about, both of those talk about hundreds of millions of dollars. People whose families had amassed billions of dollars are giving hundreds of millions of dollars for different causes. And it just drowns out the voice of local citizens. So,
but so do the amounts that labor unions contribute.
Yeah. And we've had people in some of our meetings that said, well, this is going to really hurt our union. We won't have a voice. Well, what you need to realize is your voice is becoming much smaller. That's just the reality. And secondly, the amount of money you spend, you'd be better off saving because you're not getting the impact that the people who are fighting against you, they're thwarting what that money you're putting in. So I think really, and I negotiated with unions and superintendents for years, but I think they'd be better off if they didn't have the ability to pay money. They're going to save money and the impact they're having is dwindling.
Well, at least that would be fair.
Right. Now, we can't just pick out one group and say, we're going to handicap businesses. We're going to let unions down. That would not be appropriate. Yes, sir.
I have a quick comment and question. But first, I applaud, I'm delighted by the idea of linking all this to the four-way test. More on that in a moment. In the 30 years since I've been around the legislature, now you might want to weigh in, we've been talking about campaign finance reform since the world was young. But hey, the incremental approach to, I'm not much of a constitutional amendment guy generally, but it took a while to repeal prohibition too. So go get them. Thank you. Secondly, I don't know if you're acquainted with a fella at the Columbus Club, Tom Carlisi. Do you know Tom?
I do not.
Tom is the guy that represents, as point player for our district, the Rotary Action Group for Peace. We are one of the 35, 40 clubs in our district now that's a peace builder club. They have a splendid program that's rolling out the four-way test in the furtherance of civility with young people, Rotaract, all over the planet. They've been, even though this was originated here, and I encourage you to meet Tom. They did it down in the Virgin Islands recently, where a former RI president was located nearby, and they're about to roll it out in Hong Kong, which is another district we have some affiliation. So again, the linkage of the four-way test and your initiative is splendid.
I very much appreciate it. We can talk afterwards. You give me his contact.
Yeah,
I have been in contact with, I can't remember the name, past 70 or that memory doesn't work. I'm supposed to. It's a group that Steve Stivers just became the chair of. Our chamber. Okay. And there's one other group that does a lot of good work in Columbus. I'm trying to get involved with them.
You guys work with the League of Women Voters?
Yes, in fact, League of Women Voters, as you realize, is an apolitical group. I think, quite frankly, it gets construed as being progressive quite often, mainly because of its work on fair districts, et cetera. But there has been recently an initiative where that's been suggested. Why not work with League of Women Voters? In fact, ALEC, some of you are probably familiar with the group ALEC. It's a very conservative, right-leaning group. Just had, I think it's an annual conference out in San Diego last week. And Jeff Clements, our national leader, was there. Jim Rubens, a Republican senator from New Hampshire, spoke on behalf of American Promise. So we're trying to reach out to very conservative and progressive groups to make sure this is a cross-partisan. Exactly. It's one of the few, unfortunately. Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Why not reduce political spending by making congressional terms 4 years?
That's another very good idea.
They spend half their time in office running for re-election instead of what.
That's right.
Government.
And that's another good idea. Yeah.
Election spending.
That's been brought up. In fact, I'm trying to think the name of the fellow, Neil Simon, not the playwright. Neil Simon wrote a book entitled something along the line of 10 solutions to help American democracy. And one of his is just that. Another one is ranked choice voting, if you're familiar with that. So some really good ideas out there. Unfortunately, there is a real resistance among the status quo in Congress. One leader has said, I won't mention his name, has said, campaign finance will happen over my dead body.
And just as a practical matter, when they did term limits here, the only people that knew how to find their way to the bathroom were the lobbyists. Now, that's just empirical reality. So it's a mixed bag, you know, Ken?
Yeah, and it did not help the campaign finance situation in Ohio one bit. If anything, it made it worse. Because people get in, they want to get leadership, they want to make a difference. They've got 8 years to do it. And if, you know, the cost of campaigns for legislative races in Ohio skyrocketed over that period. So that, I'm not saying that there's no merit to that, but it's not going to solve the campaign finance problem at all.
Yeah, the first day they're in office, I understand, they start raising money.
Oh my God.
Oh, before.
Yeah,
How do you get
that's
there?
true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
90% of them get reelected because they have the money advantage. Yeah,
I would say term limits, all you do is eliminate the history of what's happened in prior years. Because a lot of this stuff, if you look at it after 50 years, they're repeating themselves. It's the same issues because nobody has the memory of how to deal with it. And number two, you cited a book called by Kurt Anderson. You never told us the name.
I'm sorry, Evil Geniuses, very well titled. And it's, again, he takes shots at both parties. But these people that have done this behind the scenes over the years are very shrewd. They're very bright people. And that's why it's worked. They're very tactful. Other questions or comments?
Time for one more.
Yes.
Yes, I was just interested in your comments about the possibility of the public financing election campaigns. That is changing the rules of the game so people don't have to go out and collect funds to support them, but rather the public provides support to them to run their campaigns. And that way they'd be able to focus more on perhaps what are the critical issues that are being faced and how they expect to resolve them rather than how to raise funds.
Sign me up as a conscientious objector.
I'll watch you. I'll be here.
Well, thank you very much. That
All right.
was very insightful.
Well, I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of information. I rushed through a lot of it, but I wanted to leave time for questions and answers. I appreciate your attention. If any of those forms you run out of, let me know. I have more. Get out of my pocket here.
So next week, our speaker will be our very own Tom Rice, and he's going to give us an update on the Club Foundation. So make sure you don't miss it. We'll be live here again. And then before we leave, we have a raffle.
There's a yellow ticket.
Oh, no.
6137.
Get a green one, please.
Ken, that was $13.
There you go.
That's unlucky.
Do we do, not have the cards. Sorry, I didn't see them. We don't have them? I don't know.
Oh, we got a green one.
What is it?
Yeah, we got cards. For the eighth drawing is $263. Last four, 6981. Someone early.
Bonnie, did you?
They were here last week.
Nobody?
Is it the green one that was lost?
It might be. Wait a minute. No. Actually, it's Sam Millian.
Oh, there we go.
So he's not, he left early, so you want to pull apart for him?
No.
What do you mean you gotta be here?
Yeah.
That's the new rule?
You delegated.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Last week we did 2 pulls.
Okay.
Okay.
Green one. I'm pulling for Sam.
Oh, geez.
I'm out. He's got a 2.
There we go.
Sorry, Sam.
Okay, we've got the 4-way test. With regard to the 4-way test, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it deter friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned.
Okay.
I'm going to.
I don't know how to go about it. I'm not technical. If somebody sent me an email on the computer, I get it.
Actually, Tom Rice.
So regarding the party,
Tom Rice.
I need to check. Just tell somebody in person.
This is you down here.
I'm a mystery man because I don't get here all that often.
That's all right.
But I pay my dues.
Okay, we're done.
That's what they want anyway. It's money.
Just like anything else, right? I got this. What's your last name?
JCOB.
Oh, okay. That's my maiden name.
No.
Wonderful related. Where are you from originally?
Clintonville, Ohio.
Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati.
Oh.
Bricklaying was it's in my family.
What?
Bricklaying.
Bricklaying. My mother was just north of you.
Yeah.
You know, Preble County.
Yeah. All right, so what I'm gonna do is take a note. I'm gonna look you up, John, okay? And see if one, you're in our system.
Probably not.
Okay.
Because if I had to do something.
What's your email?
Okay. JJ, HIT.
Used to log down.
How's that?
JJ History.
At Yahoo.
Okay.
Just need to get the word out.
I will look you up, all right? And see what I can find. Because you're a member.
Yeah, last time I paid my dues, I was.
You gotta go back to when Paul Harris was born. His name.
I'll see if the system has you in.
I'm a charter member.
Okay.
Even better than a member.
Yeah.
Think of all those years I've paid those dues.
Yeah. What'd you get for it? 4-way test.
Bolton's golf trophy.
Huh?
You say what I get for it? Bolton's golf trophy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll look you up to see what's going on and